Welcome to the Humble Hoof Podcast. My name is Alicia Harlov. This is a podcast for both horse owners and hoof care professionals, offering discussions into various philosophies on the health of the hoof and soundness of your horse. Please check us out on Facebook or at thehumblehoof.com. A special thank you to our wonderful sponsor, Cavallo. For our Humble Hoof listeners, they are offering 15% off their Cavallo Trek hoof boots using the coupon code HRN at checkout. The Trek is the world's most popular and versatile hoof boot and Cavallo's toughest trail boot, while also doubling as an option for therapy or rehab. The front closure system makes it easily adaptable to various hoof shapes, and TPU upper design allows for maximum strength while minimizing weight for the comfort and ease of movement for your horse. These are recommended by vets and trainers and also loved as transport boots by barrel racers, show jumpers, dressage riders, and everyone in between. Again, for 15% off a pair of Treks, use the code HRN at checkout at cavallo-inc.com. We know that as horse owners in the winter, things can get pretty tough. Management of horses this time of year can get really tricky. And when it comes to horses' hooves, it can take a lot of consideration to not only make sure they stay comfortable and sound, but to make sure that they're safe out in the winter weather. I chatted with Beth Lewis of New Hampshire and Maggie Lambert of Colorado about what they do to change their hoof care practices in the winter to make sure their horses stay comfortable and sound and safe. So I know, Beth, you've been on the podcast before, but why don't we start with both of you giving a little bit of information about where you work, what your climate's like, and kind of, a little bit about your hoof care career right now. And go ahead.
My name is Beth Lewis. I'm the owner of Equibalance Farrier Services, and I'm located in Ossipee, New Hampshire, which is an area that gets winter early and for a long time. We currently have a lot of snow, and we just got ice after all of that rain. So winter hoof care is definitely something that I have to focus on and help my clients through because of the ice and the environmental conditions that we have here. So thank you so much for having me on. This is exciting because we're in the trenches right now.
I know,
With it
gosh.
being winter, and winter snuck up early on us this year. I was not ready.
I know. No, it's crazy. This is February weather and it's December.
Oh, it is. Yep.
Awesome. And Maggie, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm Maggie Lambert. I'm based in the high desert of southern Colorado, and then I own Diamondback Farrier Services with my husband. With the weather here, we just actually got our first little bit of snow a couple weeks ago, but a lot of the times when it does snow, it melts off pretty quickly. So I'm pretty lucky in that sense that it's kind of nice, mostly year round for the most part. And then we get a couple more bigger snows that can sometimes even come in March or even April.
Wow. That's crazy. So then you're talking about high desert, what are the temperatures? I mean, I know Beth's area because I live, an hour maybe from Beth, but what are the temperatures there year round?
Yeah, I would say pretty much right now we're actually even in the 60s. Typically when it snows, it's more not even in the negatives so far down here. But I used to be based in northern Colorado, so this year I'm kind of playing it by ear, figuring out what it's like down here. But I feel like it's even milder down here because we're pretty close to New Mexico.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. And so how far are you, just to get my bearings, how far are you from Denver? I was just in Denver last week.
Oh, yeah. So we're about, I would say 2.5 hours, but more with traffic because we're a bit south of Pueblo, if you know where that is. It's Denver, the Springs, Pueblo, and then we're a bit south of that.
Okay, awesome. Colorado's so pretty. I love it there. But yeah, awesome. I mean, I think this is great. We have, a slight variation in climate, so that's good. But ultimately, it sounds like we all deal with winter. And this year, like Beth said, is definitely rough so far for us. So I would love to talk about some tips that you guys do in terms of how you help your horses or your clients' horses get through winter in a way that's safe for them, safe for the owners, and just making sure that everybody's hooves and bodies get through soundly. So what do you do? Like, what's the first thing you do in late fall, early winter? Like, what's your like kickoff date to prepare for winter for hoof care?
That's a good question, especially for me because winter came early and I got kind of caught behind. So I used to always do that. All horses need their traction on their shoes, whether it be metal shoes or composites, and I start them the first week of November. And because our winters have been progressively getting milder and starting later, this year it came early, and I finally this past week got it all wrapped up. So I think I'm going to go back to that rule of starting around the first week of November. And I kind of let clients play it by ear with me. Like, if you want them, we can do them. Like, if they're more in like my hometown, we definitely start them early. If it's southern New Hampshire, southern Maine, or northern Mass, I have no problem putting them on like the first week of December, as long as we get them all done and completed by Christmas. Just this year was a lot different. And we had some issues with snowballs gathering under metal shoes. So I was driving around in my backup vehicle pulling shoes because I didn't have time and just caught with trying to get winter snowshoes done. So I ended up pulling a bunch of shoes like a week and a half ago just because of the snow conditions.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And Maggie, do you do shoes or what's your kind of demographic for hoof care?
Yeah, so we do offer glue-on, nail-on composites, and then also metal shoes as well. But my personal preference, and if my clients are open to it, I like to keep all of our horses barefoot whenever possible. But I do work on some horses that have specific lamenesses or chronic issues or bony remodeling that also always will need to be in shoes. And some of those are in the mountains, so we have been utilizing traction devices like road pins especially, which we really like because they're pretty adjustable. But other than that, I would say 97% of the horses that we do are barefoot year round, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And I came from a more barefoot background in terms of like my horses have typically always been barefoot. And then when I got into hoof care, I started barefoot. And even when I got into composite glue on shoeing, the majority of all my clients have been barefoot. So I was sort of learning on the fly about, wait, like if a horse is in something like a boot or a glue on, like how am I helping them with ice or snow or issues that are coming up? And something that I've done here, I don't know if you guys do this, like for clients that are in boots, I will offer to put in quick studs, especially if they buy them. They're super easy. It's like a little teeny tiny stud that's only a few millimeters. And I know a lot of clients were concerned about having like big honkin' studs that could affect their joints, like the little tiny ones that you screw in the bottoms of a boot or a glue on. They really don't affect the actual, I mean, other than the traction, I haven't seen it cause any issues in terms of like extra torque. But I don't know how much you guys utilize that in terms of, you know, ice traction or snow, or if you have owners that are using boots or composites.
Yeah, I do. I use those quick studs, either the scoot boot ones or the easy care ones. I use them in, I'll offer it to put it in clients too, because I have my whole little kit and my drill press, and then I have my hand drill right in my rig. So I'll offer to do those, but I also put them in any of my composite shoes, unless they're the Epona shoes. I use the ones that already come with traction on them. But I also stick them in like 3D clogs, whether they're custom printed or come from a company. And those work really well if the shoe is thick enough that I pop those in and then I'm able to take them out and put them in a new set too.
So when you have the clogs, sorry, this is like maybe off topic, but with the clogs, because those ones typically compress, do you have any concerns of like do the studs end up kind of getting closer to the hoof as the clog compresses?
I haven't had that problem yet, but I'm always aware of traction placement.
Mm-hmm.
So if, say, for example, like a conformable clog, I'm going to put them as far back on the heels as possible. And most of the time, those horses are barefoot behind and in clogs up front.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very minimal with my traction. And I have a really good speech that I tell all my clients, like, if you go to turn your horses out and the driveway and their turnout area is a sheet of ice, don't turn them out on that. Like, there isn't enough traction for a barefoot horse or a horse in shoes to be safe out there.
Right.
And I give them some ideas on, like, say it's been 3 days, you have to get the horses out to strip stalls and do your regular care routines. I have clients that they gather up their old manure and sprinkle it out there to give it some traction. I personally, this is a really good tip because I have a wood stove. We collect our wood ash in a big metal trash can, and I sprinkle that around on because my paddock has a huge hill going down to the barn. They have to go up and down that every day. So I put hot wood ash out on my hill when it's icy and it melts in. And then the next few days, because the wood ash is like has these black little cold chunks in it, heats up and kind of melts it and gives it really good grip and traction. So that's a really good tip for people that have wood stoves and you don't know what to do with your wood ash. And it's not harmful for them. It's great for the ground because it kind of acts as lime. So it helps break down manure over time. People use it in their gardens. So I put my wood ash out on my hill and sometimes I'll sprinkle old shavings too.
Yeah, that's so smart. I'd read people use wood ash, and we have a pellet stove. I don't know if that would be the same. I mean, it is pellets made out of wood, like they're wood pellets, but I haven't tried that. But I will do, I'll do sand. We have surfaced tracks, so this underneath the ice, if there is ice, it's typically sand or gravel. So if we're sprinkling more sand, it's just adding to the surfacing.
Right.
When it melts, I mean. But I just was reading today because I was looking through some Facebook posts about traction on ice, and people are saying that when they sprinkle sand, that the ice doesn't melt as quickly. So I wonder, I mean, in that instance, the wood ash would be better because it would be melting it too if it's hot when you're putting it on.
Uh-huh. Yep, it's hot when I put it on, and it cools really quickly. It's fun sprinkling it at nighttime because you'll see all the little red embers go down the hill. But it sticks in, and then when it's cold, when the sun's shining, because it's black, it absorbs the heat. It kind of helps dig it down into it and give them really good grip. But I can see how sand would insulate. That's how I feel about people dumping shavings all over too. Because it insulates it, then spring cleanup. I know for me, I have to wait a little bit for spring cleanup because it's so insulated under the manure while I'll still have snow and ice underneath it.
Yeah. And I mean, one thing that I know you said used shavings, but I don't think people should not use clean shavings because it makes it more slippery. They're slick on top of the ice. They'll just step. Yeah. The horse will just step and slide on it if it has nothing to soil.
Right. Yeah. Wood pellets. The wood pelleted bedding is terrible for that too. Yeah. Because it just makes marbles underneath their feet.
Right.
But yeah, old dirty shavings.
Maggie, do you see a lot of ice? Or I guess if it's a little bit more temperate, then maybe you don't get as much ice that's sustained?
Yeah, not so much down here, but I do have a lot of clients that are in the mountains. And I feel like up there, the higher elevation, the ice tends to stay a lot longer. So if I have horses up there, I do put them in a traction device of some sort. And I sometimes also use Drill Tech, if you guys are familiar with that, which is really helpful, especially when these horses are doing long miles riding over winter as well. But we just try to get up there when we can safely, but often we have to reschedule over the winter. So I usually try to give those clients up there 2 dates in case we can't get up there the first time.
So you say Drill Tech?
Yeah.
What? So this is probably a terrible thing to admit as a hoof care provider, but what is that?
Yeah, so I tend to use it. It's just kind of similar to borium, and my husband is way better at explaining these things. He's more into metallurgy than I am. But basically, you go through this process of brazing it on to a metal shoe. You stick it in the forge, and it kind of welds to that if you do it properly. And you can get them in sticks, and then you just break the sticks off to the desired part that you want to do. Usually we add it to the toe and the heels. And just like Beth said earlier, if we are putting it on the heels, we put it as far back as we can to make sure they have a stable surface.
That makes sense. Yeah. Nice. So yeah, Beth, I don't know a lot about metal traction, so I didn't know if you want to talk about some things that you do. I know that you mentioned some stuff that you do to add traction, but what other stuff can you add to your metal shoes? Is it all the same? Is it borium across the board, or what does that look like?
There's all different things. So borium and Drill Tech are not really super popular here in New England. I can't even think of the last time somebody said to me, "Can you put borium or Drill Tech on a horseshoe?" Because it's just not popular here. Generally, what I do is drive in studs and pins, which is different than when you drill and tap a shoe, and the client is responsible for removing traction studs for venting or jumping. I don't do any of those for winter. I do know some people do the type where you screw them in and out and just change the size and types. But generally, like it, for me, it depends on the size of the shoe that I'm using. Like small feet, I generally use the tungsten pins, like road pins. And there's two types. There's one with like the road pins that have the rounded end on them. And then shout out to Con and Nick Denson. The Con company came out with a pointed drive-in stud. It's like a little road pin. They're super small, but they are super aggressive. And I know some farriers up in Canada are having a great time with those. I use those as well. And those are fantastic for small feet and bigger feet, like a size 2 and up, or like my draft crosses are really big warm bloods. I tend to use the P13, which has a steel cuff around a tungsten pin. Those ones I like to get on the horses like earlier in the season, because as they sharpen up on arena surfaces or in sand footing, they get grippier and sharper as you go. And the set of studs will last me the whole cycle and the whole winter basically. So those are generally the two types of ones that I use. If I have a half set of shoes, I just shoes up front. I just use heel studs. If I do a full set, but I want to add traction to all four corners of the shoe. And so you have to think about in terms of how the horse is going to be stopping, what their conformation is, because sometimes I don't line up the heel studs or the toe studs exactly the same. I watch the wear patterns on the shoe. If the horse breaks over more laterally or more medially, I set up my traction to kind of aid the horse in how their movement is and how they track their feet versus just putting in the same spot. And then, so if I have a full set of shoes, then I'm going to have 4 studs per shoe all the way around, and with half sets of shoes, just the heels, because I always think in terms of a horse moving in a higher gait and slowing down and stopping. Yeah. If I overgrip the front end and the hinds are bare, there's a lot less traction going on behind the horse at its hind legs. And I always think of like inertia. So if I overgrip the front, and this is the same for my composite shoes as well, where I want them to kind of slide and then grip. So watching the horse move and seeing how their footfalls are helps me determine stud placement and what size stud I'm going to use. And then also thinking about, do they live like in a run out stall where it's just like a small area where they're coming in and out? Generally, the footing's going to be pretty decent versus the one that is out on a big paddock and a big hill. I might use a larger stud on that. I try not to drive them too deep into the shoe because I want them to kind of grip that ground, but I want a little bit of slide before they grip so their hind feet don't come through and like slide too far forward and they get like top line or hamstring injuries. Yeah. So traction can be a tricky thing. And I always ask my clients too, like, hey, how are they doing out when you're riding them in the arena? Because a lot of my clients, like, we get those nice snowfalls where you get like 6 to 8 inches of snow and then it warms up the next day. Everybody's doing like Facebook videos outside of them bombing around on their horses bareback, hopping on them with their blankets on and trotting around. And I always say, hey, how are they doing? Did you have good traction? Did you feel safe? Because if they don't, then I'm going to change things and maybe do bigger studs.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. And then for snow pads, I generally use maybe 95% of the horses I shoe. I use the gasket rim pads because I like the fact that the clients are able to pick the feet out and they're not fully covered on the sole. And I use those also with my 3D pads, but I do have a couple of old school clients that love the old fashioned popper pads. And I generally don't like those on thin soled horses like a thoroughbred foot. Because at the end of the season, you pull those off, you'll have like a ring of a red bruise where that popper pad is right around the apex of the frog. So I generally do more of the gasket rim pads. And a lot of those thinner soled horses are also in leather. And I find leather can either work fine in the snow or it collects a lot of snow and gives them big snowballs. So I just drop in some of the gasket rim pads on my metal horses that need some snowball removal going on. So I don't use a lot of the popper pads.
That makes sense. Yeah. Yeah. And in terms of like, so, I mean, we all mentioned that all of us have some barefoot horses on our books, you know, in terms of those horses aren't in anything that you're going to add, you know, drill tech or add like studs into. But I'm curious if you guys change your trim at all when you know that there might be some ice or traction issues. I personally have been telling all my clients that I'm leaving like a tiny bit more, like a smidge more hoof wall, a little bit more bar. Nothing that's going to be like causing bar abscesses or weight bearing bars, but just a little bit of something on the bottom of their foot. And, I tell them that it might look like the foot isn't as like neat and tidy as normal in terms of like, obviously I roll the walls, but they might not be as compact as normal, but I'd rather them have a little extra traction and grip rather than their foot looking like absolutely, snug to their sole right now. I don't know what you guys do or if you change anything.
Yeah, I tend to actually do the exact same. And like you said, just leave a little bit more support in the wall and the bars, and just make sure I'm cleaning out my seed of corn really nicely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I about do the same thing. It's a fun time of year because the feet are really slow growing.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like if I leave them just with a little bit more wall height and a little bit more bar, especially if it's a really nice, healthy foot, the bars are nice and straight, I'll leave a little touch of a ridge because in my mind, I kind of think of it as like a snowplow, if that makes sense,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
it like catches the ground and can slow them down. So I do tend to leave a little bit more of a conservative trim, and I do point it out to clients too. And I'll be like, "Look, this I'm leaving a little long, a little conservative because this ground is hard, frozen, super slippery with the snow." So I do err on the side of just being a little bit more conservative. Yeah, it makes a little bit more work in the long run when spring hits. Then we're doing full nipper runs and going from like rasping feet all winter long to then like that speed of growth hits.
Yeah.
So it was so funny. I had a client the other day where she does a little bit of trimming in between my trims, and I had to reschedule her out a little bit just to get organized with stuff. And I came over and she was like, I want to let you know, I tried to rasp their feet the other day and it was like super cold weather. She was like, how do you do this? Their feet are rock hard and so hard to like actually, she goes, my rasp was just like slipping off the foot and then it was clogging with snow. She looked at me, she goes, this is hard work. And I just like finished up doing 4 of her horses and one of them's a dress. And I looked at her, I said, thank you for saying that because this is really hard work. Like the feet are like petrified, like wood or just rock, and your tools slip out over it and you're slipping with your feet and your rasps are getting clogged. Like it's just tough. And I love the fact that she like recognized that and was like, this is hard work. And I was like, thank you. It is. And I looked at it and I go, and we're leaving the feet a little bit longer just for a little bit more grip. She's got like a track system too.
Oh,
So
cool.
I was just worried for those horses that are not stalled, they're out 24/7. I did leave them a little smidge long, but they weren't long to begin with.
Right.
So it's going to work out good for those horses.
Yeah. And in terms of like the tool use, I swear today when I was trimming some horses, it felt like I was trimming glass because their feet are like cold and like wet and cold. So they're frozen.
Yeah,
And then your
it's
tools, like,
weird.
it's like your tools are just sliding over it like you're trying to trim glass. So,
Right.
man, I can't
It's
even
different
imagine.
than
Yeah.
right. It's different than like when we get super dry weather in the summertime. It's a different texture to the feet, winter
Right.
versus summer. It's not a dry foot. It's like a frozen hard foot.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Exactly.
It's hard to explain.
I appreciate the moisture that winter typically brings, but at the same time, I get a little bit annoyed when my rasp just gets clogged. But
Mm-hmm.
the desert feet here in the summer can sometimes be backbreaking.
Yeah, I will say I went in 2020, I think, out to California to trim in like desert environment, and I could not. Like I just
Same.
I literally spent like one day, I probably trimmed like 5 horses and my wrists were like killing me. I don't know how people do that all the time. I mean, obviously you do, right? Like that's your summer, like that's just the feet
Oh
are
yeah.
just so hard.
Yeah, I feel like too, I don't know if it's just because of the moisture, but I go through rasps a little bit slower in the winter, but not as slow as I'd prefer.
Yeah. How many feet,
But
just out of curiosity, how many feet do you guys get per rasp? Or like what rasp do you use? No, this is not an ad for anybody listening. but what rasp do you use and how many hooves, or no, how many horses I should say do you usually get out of it?
I guess I'm a little finicky. In the summer, I tend to use the Legend Excel, which is the green tang by
Mm-hmm.
Heller. And then in the winter, I've been just using the regular blue tang, the Excel, which I like a lot. I also tried to use the Cody James Diamondback ones at some point, and I got the aggressive model and I really didn't like using it. So that just sits there. But I tend to go through my rasps if I'm feeling generous, I'll use them a little bit less because I sometimes will turn them into spurs.
No.
Um, so I tend to usually get around 25 in the summer and
Wow.
then a little bit more in the winter.
Yeah, I will say I use the Legend Excel and I probably get like I aim this sounds bad. Obviously I let go of my rasp. I get a new one when it starts to feel like work to trim because I want to save my body. But I feel like
Yeah.
I typically get like on average 40 horses to a
Mhm.
Legend Excel. What one do you use, Beth?
I use the Heller Black Master,
Oh
and
yeah.
I used to just use them in the wintertime because that black coating tends to like keep the ice out of the little rasp teeth. But then I also like to use them for hard, dry summer feet as well. And then I just ended up using them year round. Now the finish side of them is very aggressive. So
Hmm.
I'm very careful how I finish feet. And then I use a photo finish if I'm shoeing horses and want to like dress a nice wall, especially if it's like a show horse or something. The Save Edge photo finish, like that is a really nice rasp, but I don't do like a big trim with that. I'm just like kind of dusting and shining off the wall with it. But that Heller Black Master, and I love that one. I tell like new apprentices, I'm like, you're not allowed to buy one of these yet because you need to learn how to use it because it's aggressive. It will
That's
cut
interesting.
some foot down if you're not careful.
Man, I need to
Yeah.
try it then.
Yeah.
I ended up trying the Save Edge Dark Horse over the summer as well, and I really liked it. And then when it was time for me to get another box, I couldn't find them. They were all sold out everywhere, so I'm hoping to get some more of those when they're back in stock again.
Yeah, and so like Beth, how many do you usually get out of the Black Master? Did you say?
I would say around 45, 50.
Oh,
I
that's
know out of
good.
one rasp, I keep some down in the vineyard and I change one out like every third trip. So I get a fair amount of horses out of a black master. I
Wow.
should probably like set up a bench grinder to like buff them up a little bit, but I
Yeah.
just sometimes I think about doing that and I just don't have time in my life for doing that. So
I
I have
know.
like piles of old brass. I'm like, I should sharpen these and then never get around to doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
I
I
have to
don't do
do the
that either.
same
Yeah.
with how quick I go through them. It just feels kind of wasteful. But I tend to use both the rough and the fine side equally as much.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I always think that I'm going to start to learn how to sharpen them and then I just end up giving my like quote unquote dull rasps to owners who want to touch up their own horse's feet. And to them
Yeah.
it's sharp and to me it's like
Yeah.
so dull.
Yeah.
But yeah. Well, in terms of like hoof morphology, I guess is the right word. Do you guys notice anything? I mean, Beth and I obviously have similar climates, but I don't know if Maggie, you notice anything about the hooves in the winter. Here, I will say I find that snow feet are my favorite. It's like the snow kind of like
Yes.
buffs the hooves and makes it so clean. But do you guys notice any changes in the winter with the feet?
I think when it's really wet out here consistently, I do see a little bit more expansion in the feet, especially if there's like an existing pathology or a lot of flaring already in a lot of the horses that I see.
Yeah. Anything you see, Beth?
Uh, I love snowy, clean feet. I feel
Mm-hmm.
like the horses that I work on that are out 24/7, all of their thrush goes away. I feel like their feet tend to gather up. So this is probably the opposite of Maggie, where I feel like because they've been out on pasture spring, summer, and fall, and the ones that might be like borderline metabolic, their feet look so good in the wintertime. And then like late spring, they start falling apart because they're back on grass again. So a lot of horses, like I love how good their feet rally through the winter time, but the ones that are stalled overnight or stalled a lot, like the show horse types, the thrush is way worse in the wintertime than in the summertime. So I tend to recommend products like the Spray Groom's Hand and Durasol because those products don't freeze in the winter, so they can just keep it right in their tack trunk or their grooming area or whatever. And I like products that don't freeze because a lot of like even the clay ones are hard to like get out of the container. And I just want to make things super easy for my clients. And Groom's Hand and Duracell are two things that I keep in my own barn because I move all my like perishable, my liquids and stuff into my house. And it's a pain to go back. Like you get to the barn, you're like, oh, I forgot to bring my hoof clay or something. So that Duracell and the Groom's Hand don't freeze in the winter. So those are my two wintertime products that I recommend for horses that are stalled a lot, that are just standing in their manure and stalls and dirty shavings, or especially when we get a blizzard that takes them 2 days to shovel out and get the horses out. I tell clients to, like, if you know they're going to be in, pre-treat their feet and try to keep them as clean as possible. But the ones that are out 24/7, their feet just rally. All the thrush goes away because that snow cleans them out, and it's so good. I love snowy, clean feet.
Yeah, same. And I was just thinking about why it would be opposite, but I guess Maggie, if you have like desert type climate in the summer, like I know when it's super dry here, if the horses aren't on pasture, then their feet almost start to, I don't want to say contract, but like when it's super dry, they sort of like, condense, like they like suck up into these like little tiny dried out hooves with like, even their frogs can get a little bit like sunken in, or not sunken in, but like compacted. And
like dehydrated.
yeah, dehydrated. And then I'm wondering if your winter, because you have some like snow, or if it's not as much of a like a hot, dry climate, if that's almost like your wet season, where then the feet will like open up a bit more. Whereas for us, it's like, what kind of wet is it here? Like, is it a cold wet or is it a warm wet?
Yeah. Most of the horses I can't really think. Sometimes they're on softer dirt, but I don't really do a lot of horses that are just out on pasture. I do a lot of horses that are dry lotted, or like where I have my horses at our place, it's just like mostly a mix of sand and dirt, and then a lot of gravel.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. And in terms of like what I see, I mean, I see a lot of the same stuff that Beth does. And I will say, like, all winter long, I think I'm like such a great trimmer. Like, oh my goodness, these feet are so great. I'm so good at my job. And then when it comes to, and then spring hits and I'm like, I'm the worst in the world. Why am I so bad at this? But it's because they, horses go back on grass and their feet just start to fall apart. And it's like, now I've gotten to the point where I'm like, okay, this is a cycle. Like, I know what's going to happen. But yeah, I do see feet just, typically they get so much healthier. And, Beth referenced it earlier about how the feet do tend to slow down in growth in the winter. And I think that because of that, if you're staying on a cycle, you're able to get ahead of pathology, or distortion, I should say. You get ahead of distortion because you're able to correct things before it becomes an issue, as opposed to like, the rest of the year, we're trying to chase after the distortion. And then the winter, we can finally get ahead of it. But I don't know if you guys have people that will try to, like, kind of argue about cycle length in the winter. I've had to deal with that this winter quite a bit, actually, already.
Yeah, I used to be based in northern Colorado, up by CSU, for several years. Like I said, we've just been down here for actually going on about 2 months now.
Oh, wow.
And up north, everybody was pretty great about staying on the same cycle length throughout the year. But I found down here, like when fall was turning into winter, I started to hear clients down here requesting just a longer trimming cycle. And this is fine in some cases if the horses are already wearing their feet down naturally, or they're being used a lot. But a lot of the time, I really love the wintertime to get ahead of existing pathology, especially because they're growing a little bit less. But I try to keep them on a consistent schedule if I can.
Yeah, absolutely. I know. And I've had some owners that have already been like, well, I don't want to call anybody out, but I've had some owners that are like, oh, their feet aren't really growing. So like, want to just book for the spring? And I'm like, absolutely not. Like, that is way too far out. I mean, their feet might be growing a little less, but they're not growing like 5 months less. Like, I don't know what you're talking
about. That is one quick way to find yourself no longer on my books.
Yes.
When somebody says, I will call you when their feet look long. No, you won't. I'll be busy. There'll be no room. I don't tolerate that at all.
Yeah.
So that honestly happens a lot, that I tell them, like, hey, your horse has this existing pathology. I really don't think we should push your appointment out any further. And then they just try to find somebody else. And then they try to come back when nobody wants to work with them. Which is unfortunate, but it's just a part of being in this business, I think.
I have some horses where I know their feet really well because I've been doing them for years. And I'll feel okay with pushing maybe a 7-8 week cycle on those ones, especially if they're older horses that are owned by elderly people. And I know the winter time is tough for them as well. but I know those horses so well that I'm like, yeah, that 30-year-old horse that has perfect feet, he can wait a little bit longer. Like he's just hanging out and eating hay all day. Like that will be fine. But the rest of like my performance horses and are ones that have issues or ones that I know that might be prone to winter laminitis, I still keep that wicked short 4-week cycle on those horses because part of it is making sure that we get ahead and see signs of something that might be going on because I do see a couple cases of winter laminitis where I'm at. And this year so far, I haven't had any, but the ones that I know that are prone to it, a lot of my clients were really awesome this year and either did blood work in the fall or adjusted medications because we had that cold snap.
Yeah.
And I was like messaging clients left and right, like, how is he doing? Keep an eye on him. Let me know if you need any tips or help. If you need me to come out and take a look at their feet. And everyone so far has been doing okay. I do get a little bit frustrated with some clients that just overfeed their horses in the wintertime.
Yeah.
And they start like October, like when we first get a little bit of a crispy fall, and they're just like, oh, it's cold. I need to feed them more. They need to gain weight for winter. And I'm like, stop. No, they don't.
Yeah.
They're already husky. They're already growing in a great winter coat. Please do not overfeed them now. Save it for when we're like a high of 8 degrees. That's the day that they can eat as much hay as they need to stay warm when they're outside. But please don't start that too early. So for the most part, I have some really good, well-trained clients. And like for scheduling, like I just tell people, I said, look, we're going to keep a 6-week cycle because when winter hits and we have to reschedule for a snowstorm, I might be delayed in my scheduling for a week or two. And if we keep a schedule year round, if we have to go 2 weeks overdue, the feet stay okay. And most people go, oh, that's a great idea. So that's kind of how I kind of coach people into because they'll be like, is 8 weeks okay? And I'm like, let's do 6 weeks. If we have a snowstorm, I'll have to reschedule. So we will delay it if there's weather related cancellations and we'll just work with that. And I just go, oh, okay, great idea. Because I'd rather have the appointment booked at their regular cycle. And if we need to reschedule, their feet will be fine because we keep a good routine cycle year round.
Yeah, exactly. And not only that, I tell owners, like, just watch how much better their feet get in the winter if we stay on a cycle and then they see the improvements. I mean, most of them, there are some horses, like Beth said, there's some horses where like their feet are great and no matter what you do, like their feet are just good and, going a little longer in the winter doesn't hurt them. And I try not to tell people about those horses because I don't want everyone to think their horse is the one that it doesn't have to be done all that often in the winter. But there are some where you're really able to get ahead of their issues in the winter and the owners are like amazed at how much better their feet are if they just trust me to be like, okay, we're going to stick to that 4 to 5 weeks and we're going to see these feet improve. And then, we'll make a decision in the spring if we need to adjust in terms of like, should they be on an even tighter schedule. There are some horses that I see even shorter than that just to make sure that their issues aren't going to cause them a problem. But the winter is usually a really good time to really see that progress.
Yeah, I had one case last year. This is really bad that I'm going to admit this, but I don't know if I was in a rush or maybe the lady wasn't home. She's got a draft cross, he's an aged horse. I popped in, I did them myself because sometimes our work schedule or she's got some health issues and sometimes can't come out to the house. So I remember I did them and I usually email her the next day and I never did. And it had been like 3 months and I was at the neighbor's house and she was like, hey, you've been up the street working on so-and-so's horse. And I went, oh my God, I completely forgot about him. And then, so I left that lady's house, totally forgot again to reach out for her. That poor horse went 6 months without me showing up.
Oh no.
And right, because the neighbor, like I showed up 6 weeks later at the neighbor's house. She's like, hey, did you do that horse? I went, oh my God, I forgot to do him. And so she didn't reach out to her. And at that point, I was just like, she probably got somebody else. Like I'm at this point, it's been so long, I'm not even going to reach out. As I said to my client, so she called the neighbor and was like, hey, Beth was just here. And she's like, oh my God, I totally forgot to reach out. Like I kept thinking about it, kept thinking like, oh, Beth's going to email me and pop in. She never did. So she reached out to me. I went over to see the horse. His feet were perfect. Absolutely perfect. He went the whole winter with no hoof care at all. Bad me, bad her. And because he's out 24/7 and he lives on a hill, he just kept his feet like amazing. It looked like I had done them 6 weeks before that. And I just like did like a light rasp and pulled his bars back and like cleaned his frogs out. I was like, this is amazing. And then she was like, does he really need this much hoof care? I'm like, yeah, actually we do need to get that. So that one I do like every 8 weeks now, and his feet look great. So he's my one horse. If I skip a cycle or two, he's fine.
Yeah.
But it was remarkable to see, because I thought, like, when I showed up after winter, I thought his feet were going to be a wreck, and they were amazing. It was just, it blew my mind, but I generally don't do that.
Well, I tell people, like, movement covers a multitude of sins. Like, if those horses are out moving all the time and they're, kind of self-maintaining a little bit, especially with I don't know if you see this, Beth, but I feel like snow has like abrasive properties because it's like little bits of ice, really. It's like little daggers that are kind of chipping away at their feet. So, granted, in terms of most horses that I see, they're unfortunately not out all the time, or they don't move as much when they're out because, I don't know, they have their hay in one spot and it's right next to their water. But those horses that are moving so much throughout the day, it's really good for their feet. And they can handle that.
I've got a mule, and I don't do his feet a lot. I check them. I pick them all the time. He goes every like 4 months before I go, okay, it's time for me to trim him because I feel neglectful. But he can go the majority of the winter. Like, I think the last time I did him was like October time, and I was just peeked at his feet. I'm in my bar. I peeked at his feet. They still look great.
Yeah,
so there are some that
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I'm good.
Oh, yeah, it's super nice to have those horses that genetically just have better feet. Like, I see a lot of mules that are crossed with giraffes. They have great feet genetically if they're well-maintained drafts, or draft crosses are pretty good. But I also do a lot of, quarter horses and thoroughbreds and just kind of grade in between horses that honestly I feel like their feet fall apart just because they weren't bred a super ethical way.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And in terms of these horses that we're seeing, a lot of them that are in that extra protection are because they have pathology. And so I would love to talk a little bit about horses that you guys see that might be metabolic or have a history of founder issues or laminitis, and changes that you might do for winter. Obviously, really, what it comes down to is the owner. The owner is going to be doing a lot of this. But what are some tips that you're giving your owners in terms of how to keep their horses sound and comfortable in the winter?
Yeah, I think kind of just like we were talking about earlier, that people have a tendency to overfeed their horses because they're so concerned about them. I would actually prefer people to blanket their metabolic horses instead of overfeeding them just to keep them where they're at. But it's pretty interesting because, like I said, we've only been down here a little bit, but I have a metabolic horse. He's a Rocky Mountain. And I actually noticed his feet changing, even though he was getting the same hay, and he just has an event line now just from when it dropped down. So that makes me think a little bit more on winter laminitis, which I have a couple clients that deal with that. It's a recurring thing year round, and these are just clients that have had horses that have had multiple bouts of laminitis or have foundered as well. And I just feel like there's been permanent damage to their hoof lamellar connection. And that's usually when I see, especially up north in Cheyenne, Wyoming, they have really bad winds, like year round, really. But I have one horse up there that like suffers with winter laminitis every year. And it's just kind of hard because if they're not being managed properly, or they can't find a consistent hay supplier, there's always going to be kind of that influx of not knowing like the percentages of hay that you're feeding, or making sure it's like low NSC as well. So it's just kind of tricky to manage those horses, especially when they're older as well. Like with Cushing's, people are really worried about putting weight on them and then keeping them there. And that is kind of harder too for the older horses, but it can be difficult because then I see their feet take a negative step backwards as well.
Yeah. Sometimes I have to like point out to clients when they think that their horse is too lean or too thin, but they have those like hormonal fat pads and the fat pads around the tail head and a big shoulder one. I look at them and I go, they have fat on them. It's just not in the right places. Right. Use a blanket instead. Don't try to increase their rations. And here in New England, I feel like we don't, like, a lot of clients stock up on hay for the winter time. So I'm always pushing clients to start testing their hay. Like, oh, we just stocked up for the winter. I'm like, great, run a hay test on that and make sure that your hay supply that's going to get you through the winter time is safe for your metabolic horses. And the winter laminitis, I feel like it's a little bit of a different beast than like spring or fall
Yeah.
laminitis, where I feel like because they're not moving around as much, the weather's super cold, that those cases that I know that it most likely is the winter laminitis, warming them up, putting leg wraps on them, hoof boots and like wool socks or extra padding in there and stalling them with extra bedding. And if it's winter laminitis, they usually improve with just keeping them a lot warmer. And I almost like think about it as when they get painful, that it's like this is probably not correct, but it's how I explain it to my clients, that it's like diabetic nerve pain, that the ground is
or like
cold,
Raynaud's.
right. Yeah, absolutely. That their bodies are cold, their blood supply is slowing down, and it's causing their feet to get really cold. So let's warm them up. So once they start warming them up, they make a big improvement. And there are some products and supplements that I will suggest to owners, especially when the diet is really good. The J herb, that's one that has some really good science. I know Mad Barn has a really great blog or article on winter laminitis that I generally send that to all my clients that I know. I'm like, that pony has struggled last winter. It's going to do it again this year. Let's be on top of it and make sure that they're not too fat. And then when they start like getting a little sore footed or slowing down in their movement, and when you just go, something's not right, let's get some blood work done, because chances are their insulin or their ACTH is unregulated and too high. We might need to make some changes.
Right. And then sometimes it can get tricky too, because my clients used to be in Northern Colorado, but they moved up there and they were having trouble finding a consistent vet. And I'm in a predicament now where this vet is just recommending shoes, and I don't feel like they have a full bearing of winter laminitis. So I wish there was a little bit more out there for other vets and practitioners to kind of learn a little bit more about it.
Yeah, ECIR has some good resources, and it's hard because I know that some, I think Dr. Kellen's amazing. I've learned so much from her, and I know that some, are slow to pick up on some of the stuff that she does in terms of like, I feel like she's kind of ahead of the curve when it comes to a lot of this research that's being done. But she does have a lot on the winter laminitis and a lot of the same things you guys were suggesting in terms of like keeping them warmer and using the J herb and, the wool socks, boots, things like that. I've seen that help too. And I have clients who, even if they know if there's going to be a cold snap, they do it proactively, like preventatively. They'll just do that stuff beforehand to try to prevent that from happening, because it's like that damage to the blood vessels, the AVA shunts in the hoof, they're just like unable to get good circulation when it's cold. And like, if somebody out there is dealing with a horse that is acting laminitic, but nothing's changed in their diet and nothing's changed in their blood work, then I would assume it's winter laminitis, because it doesn't respond the same way. It doesn't respond to the diet changes because it's not actually due to high insulin. It's due to like that lack of good circulation. So, yeah. Awesome. Well, do you guys have any like good or do you have any like last minute tips that you want to share in terms of like surviving the winter? Because that is one thing that I struggle with, is just getting through the winter.
I would say I like to thank all of my clients that offer me hot tea or hot coffee and a nice warm place to work. Well, I've had clients like pull vehicles out of their garages and put stall mats down and set up space heaters, which is amazing and awesome, making sure that they have a good cleared area where I'm going to be shoeing horses. Like, don't have me park where it's a sheet of ice, or if it is, because like some of the big barns, they'll empty their water buckets right out the back door, and that's where I park. And I'm like, can we not throw water buckets where I'm like sliding in ice here? And if there is, because I'll like message people like, hey, is that area ice free? I'm getting ready to get there, and I'll just have them put salt or something down on top of it, and just like think in terms of making sure that our job is as easy as possible in the winter time, so we can enjoy coming to your property and getting your horses done, so we don't go, wow, that really sucked. Those horses were, had big snowballs on their feathers. Like, clean up their legs and put polo wraps on them to get their feathers out of our way, and do what you can. I've had horses or clients throw down stall mats or like those indoor outdoor rugs on top of like compacted snow. So when I put my tools on the ground, they just don't drop in 6 inches of snow because all they have is like a paddock and a run-in shed, that's got frozen manure in it.
Yeah.
So little things like that make a huge deal. And like offering me a hot cup of tea when I've got like 10 horses to trim is just amazing and remarkable. Like I'm going to come back. That makes me happy.
Absolutely.
Just the little things that can continue to get you through the day. But I find that also I like to use gloves, bear paw gloves to trim and shoe over the winter, except when I'm checking shoe fit. And then I really love my wild rag. I tend to keep it on the first couple horses and then I start to heat up and then I can take it off.
What is that?
A wild rag. It's like, the silk scarves that you can wrap around and then tie up on your neck. It's a little bit lighter than like a heavier scarf. So I really like it.
I'm wearing one right now.
No way.
Yeah. I love mine. Yeah, they're fantastic. And then I have heated glove liners because I think I have Raynaud syndrome because the cold's been really bad on my hands and they begin like really weird and red and white and blotchy and I lose my fingertips and it's so painful. I've never had this happen before, but I think it's associated with my low thyroid, which like we're working on getting my health stuff straightened out. But in the meantime, I was like, this is really cold and like gloves are not warm, especially if like the feet are wet and cold and your gloves get wet. Right. And it can be a real struggle. And like, sometimes I'll take my nippers and rasps and like my wire brush, if I'm just trimming and I keep them in the cab of my truck and have them nice and warm for the appointment. So I don't get out and grab cold tools. That is a big thing. But the heated glove liners, because I can just pop my trim gloves right over them. Those have been a game changer for me this winter.
Yeah. And vet wrap can also be super helpful to put, on the handles of your nippers. I like to do that from time to time.
Yeah.
But honestly, like the gloves are my best friend because I find my hands get fatigued the fastest in the winter, probably because I have arthritis.
Already?
Well, it's just a guess.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm sure I do. Actually, I know I do. Because I had an x-ray of my hand, whatever, because horse stuff. And they did say I have arthritis in one of my thumbs. And I was like, cool, that's great.
Yeah, it's impossible to get back in this line of work, You just can't avoid it for the most part.
All right. Yep. Make sure your tools are super sharp. Your knives are well maintained. And the moment that rasp feels dead, chuck it and get a new one.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome. Well, I feel like we could literally chat forever because there's so much that we could talk about when it comes to this stuff. But I really appreciate you guys being willing to talk a little bit. And I would love to, I'm sure in the future we can have other things that we can talk about. And I'd love to have you guys back on.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, anytime.
Yes, thank you so much. And I'm super excited because Maggie sent me a message and we're going to meet up at the Hoofcare Summit and she's sharing my hotel room with me with her husband too. So that's a huge help for me. And I'm super excited to meet you. And this is like a great introduction to each other for that trip that we're going to do together too. So I'm like wicked excited to meet you.
That's so great. Awesome. Well, tell me how it is. I like literally can't leave the farm in January. It's like the hardest time.
Right?
Next time.
Yeah,
That's
definitely. Or I guess it's February this year, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. Yep. Still wintertime.
Yeah. Well, thanks again and have a great night, right? Nope. Well, rest of your day for Maggie because she's a few hours behind.
Right.
But again, I appreciate it and I will talk to you both soon and I'll send this over so that you can take a listen and hopefully I probably won't have time to edit it today or tomorrow, but I'm hoping like Monday night or Tuesday night and you can take a listen.
Sounds good.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, Alicia. We really appreciate it.
Oh, I appreciate you guys. Thank you.
You guys too.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. I always say that I'm slightly more hoof obsessed than the average person, and chances are, if you're listening to a hoof care podcast, you are too. So we should probably be friends. Feel free to find me on Facebook or email me at thehumblehoof@gmail.com.